I saw Politico had an article. It was "Why Pete Buttigieg Enrages the Young Left." And you can see the headline there, and you can read it for yourself. And look, I think that it's fair to question. Like, there certainly are a lot of young left, especially online people that do have a particular issue with him. I consider myself one of those. And so I was interested to see, was Politico going to be able to sort of accurately understand what the issues with Pete Buttigieg are? And I'm not sure how well they did. I want to read just a couple of quick excerpts, and then I want your opinion. So they say, the unspoken truth about the furor Buttigieg arouses is that his success threatens a core belief of young progressives, that their ideology owns the future, and that the rise of millennials in a democratic politics is going to bring an inevitable demographic triumph for the party's far left wing. In the eyes of radicalized young leftists, Buttigieg isn't just an ideological foe, he's worse than that. He's a square, and they talk about how he's considered like a millennial traitor or something like that. I mean, what do you think about Politico and outside of people on the left, their ability to understand the criticisms that he's facing?
Well, it's painful. Speaking of young progressives, here's one here who's home with the flu. So it's painful for me to acknowledge, but I am probably not one of those young progressives that Politico would be talking about. I'm in my 40s now, but I think they kind of missed what's going on here, and because I think it's a lot simpler, and a lot of it just has to do with his success in the polls. If he continued to hang around 4 or 5% and continued talking about the things that he talked about early in the campaign: structural Supreme Court reform, abolishing the filibuster, abolishing electoral college, supporting Medicare for all, nobody would have had any problem with him, and you wouldn't have needed all of these complicated think pieces to get to it. But as he's rising in the polls, then he becomes a serious threat. And so I think for that significant reason, a lot of young progressives kind of started going after him. And if he had stuck to a lot of the things that he was saying early in the campaign, he's for Medicare for all, for criminal justice reform, for all these structural reforms, then the rise in the polls wouldn't alone have been enough to draw the ire of progressives. All the personality quirks aside, you had a combination of him attacking all of these progressive ideas very aggressively. See you, Virginia. And so, it just stands to reason that progressives would, turn on somebody who's attacking progressive ideas.
And one thing that, I don't know if it's a willful omission, but Pete Buttigieg over the past couple of months, a lot of the harshest questioning that he's faced is his fundraising. And so I agree. I think that had he not risen in the polls, he wouldn't have gotten much negative attention necessarily. But once you rise, then as someone who doesn't support that candidate, you have to start to see, what did they say to get that rise? Who were they supported by financially and in the media? And that is where the criticism comes from. And I think a lot of these analyses don't want to delve into harsh questions about his fundraising, his often extremely dismissive responses to questions about that fundraising, the fact that many non-supporters to Pete Buttigieg believe that the media has given him effectively a pass. Like, these are all things that I think they don't necessarily want to get too into, because it questions, well, them for one thing, but also the general fundraising strategy of many candidates.
Yeah, and I think the media misunderstands a lot of it, and particularly on Medicare for all, for instance. The media treats Medicare for all kind of as a proxy of how progressive you are, but to millions of people, it's a very serious, timely, and urgent issue as well. I mean, actually take Virginia, who was just here a second ago, and I was tweeting about this in the last day or two. She woke up on January 1st with a fever, and so because her twin sister had already had the flu, we immediately took her down the street to the CVS Minute Clinic, which owns Aetna, which is our insurance provider. It's absurd that the provider and the insurer are in the same company. And of course, they also own the pharmacy. They prescribed Tamiflu, and we go over, and they want $198 for this Tamiflu, because the new deductibles kick in. We have a $6,000 deductible, which of course we haven't met because it's January 1st.
Yeah.
In order to get her twins Tamiflu, it was $10 last week for the copay, and so much of our healthcare system is this barbaric lottery. What rational sense does it make? Did she make a mistake by waiting until January 1st to present her fever? if she'd have done it on December 31st, it would have been $188 cheaper. And so, that's not a unique situation. That happens to millions of people every day around this country that are interacting with this healthcare system. And then to see Buttigieg out there saying, "Well, I trust you to make your own healthcare decisions," clashes so sharply with what he said in the beginning of the campaign, which is that he supports Medicare for all. And I think people get that it was a calculated strategy, that he needed a small dollar army, he needed a rationale for his candidacy early on in the campaign, and so he presented himself as this kind of insurgent progressive candidate who didn't have the baggage of being a 78-year-old Democratic socialist. And so as a result of that, he picked up enough energy to make himself a viable candidate, even though he was just the mayor of South Bend. If he'd have tried to present himself as just another centrist, he had all of these other folks to compete with. But then when it was clear that he wasn't going to win on the progressive side, and I'm sure he was clear about that from the beginning, then he switches and jumps over into the moderate lane. And he did this in full view of people who are aware of what's going on, to then be surprised that people would take some umbrage at that that kind of blatant politicking is a little bit naive on the part of the media.
I agree. Thank you for watching this clip from the Damage Report. For more content from the show and access to TYT Network members-only exclusives, go to tyt.com/Brooke. Wait, no, it's tyt.com/John. Go to tyt.com/John to sign up.